everyone. Welcome to Across the Diaspora. I am here today with a guest. We're doing things a little bit differently today. So let me know you're hearing us clearly. Let me know you're seeing us clearly. Before we jump in, though, I want to welcome my guest. Oh, I think I need to switch the names. I just noticed that. So I'm going to welcome my guest, Miss Victoria Williams, and I'm going to make a quick switch in the name. But before we do so, or while I do so, I'm going to have her introduce herself.
Right.
Welcome, welcome.
Victoria Williams, and graduate of Arizona State University in African American Studies. I am a connoisseur of all things Queen Nzinga, so I'm super excited about today's conversation. Zoe and I have taught together and school together, and so I'm really, really excited to have this dialogue.
Yes. It's going to be a good conversation today. It's going to be great. So I think we have because we doubled the account. I'll have to go back to make the change.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. So everybody, this is her name is Victoria Williams. So my apologies for that. But I will edit it afterwards, after we're done with the show. So if just please signal, this is the first time I'm having someone with me in the studio. So this is the first time I'm working with this setup. Let us know if there are any hiccups. If you're not hearing us properly, let us know. So as Victoria mentioned, we went to school together. We went to Arizona State University. We both majored in African American studies, and so that's where we got to know each other. And I think we were part in a few ASU organizations. Were you in Stars? Yes,
Stars.
yes. Stars and Cova, yes. I think that's pretty.
BSU.
Yeah, the Black Student Union there.
Mhm.
So we're both pretty active. Took a lot of classes together. So we know each other for some time, and we worked together in the same school last year. For the past 3 years, and I must say that Victoria did a really great job helping me to get acclimated to the school because she was there a year prior to me getting there. So thank you for helping me adjust to that new environment.
Thank you for being like not only just that familiar face, but that familiar mind frame.
True.
We
Yes.
didn't always have that.
Yes. That is true. That is true. That is true. So could you imagine the two of us,
All around a campus.
yes, at a
Unsupervised most of
middle
the time.
school academic institution in the West Valley. It was fun. It was fun. We
It was
did some
fun.
great
We
stuff.
left the same year too.
Yes, we
This is
left the
both
same
our
year.
first year being away.
Yes. So neither of us will be returning to the school. I know we've definitely made an impact and an imprint on the school. So that was good times, good times. Oh, this is the Victoria. Yes, this is the Victoria. You've met her before. Philo.
Oh
Philo. He's commenting there. So we are, just let me know about the camera if you can see me properly. But we are going to be talking about Queen Nzinga and uh, basically the fact that 50 Cent is doing a series on her. We'll be talking about what that actually means in modern times. Another film that is being made featuring dynamic African women warriors, right? What is the gender, differences and the relationship between the genders and how it looks in comparison to the kind of society we're in today. So we have a lot to talk about. Victoria's been preparing for this. So I am ready. I am bracing myself. And I think what I've noticed, I don't know, should we call her Nzinga, Jinga,
Or Zinga.
or Zinga? Well, the N is silent.
I know the N is silent.
The N is silent.
So I would say it's Zinga.
Zinga. Okay. I know there are a few pronunciations.
Yes, most definitely. But for some odd reason, I also noticed that some people are also using her baptism name of
Oh
and
no, please no.
like, no, we don't
No,
do that.
no, 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 yeah, no. So we're gonna go into that. She did convert to Christianity at one point, and some say it was strategic, right?
It's
And
definitely
yes,
political.
it was political. It was
Definitely.
political.
Yeah.
So I did hear a few times the reference to Amazon. Ah, Amazon
It's
Warrior again.
such a difference.
So let's call her by her name, Zinga. And before I even jump into that, right, why I think this is so fitting is because at ASU, you started an organization called the Zinger Sisterhood Circle, right? And
Yes.
Zinger Sisterhood.
Yes.
And I was part of that with a few ladies. And can you, to be honest, at that time, I do not believe that I even knew who she was, right? Because I don't think any of the African American studies classes we took even did not touch on really not on
At,
any African queen.
while covering the same time period.
Yes, there have been absolutely no mention to any. Yes, they talk about kingdoms, right? Like Zimbabwe and so forth, but absolutely no mention of African
Historical
warriors.
figures, and I think
No.
that's something that's been missing in a lot of African studies.
Yes.
Is the study
Yes.
culture and concept, but not
Not the
figures.
people. Not the people.
European history study.
It's all about the people. It's all about the people, how
Yeah.
amazing they were.
Yes. So,
Yes.
yeah. So that was for me super important because I felt like it created a representation
Yeah.
on campus, but also because Black women on campus were not highlighted.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I wanted a name that would stand out,
Mm-hmm.
but also had a meaning that people would want to go out and look.
Ah,
Not only
yes,
just her, but
yes,
we even
yes,
put, so some people even called us like the Cadillac group, where we're
yes,
just like this anti-male situation, but we had male members.
yes,
We had
yes.
a lot of male members.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so for me, it was just highlighting this idea
Mm,
that we needed to be seen
yeah,
and people needed to know about us.
yeah, yeah. That was outside of the traditional Greek organizations because, of course, they were present on
Oh,
campus.
absolutely.
But
And they did an
outside of,
amazing job of
yeah,
offering that
yes,
representation.
yeah. But in that context, I think the organization you started was quite unique. And I really appreciate you for doing that because then that expanded my awareness of so much more of African history that I wasn't aware of.
Yeah. And it really was about the advocacy and showcase. I know every meeting we highlighted somebody,
Yeah.
some female figure within
Yeah.
the African diaspora.
Yeah. And you see, and that's where the benefits of college and school is. Now, I'm very much in the business world, the entrepreneurial world, and I'm going to go on a little tangent in regards to the debate of the importance of school and education, right? And I've noticed that there's this trend of entrepreneurs making the statement, oh, you're taught to, you go to kindergarten, you go to high school, you go to college, and then, you get this job that where is not really matching to what you studied in school, and you're wasting all this time out of school when you could be out there learning the real world and making money. And I'm noticing, particularly in our community, there's this increased push, or there's this rhetoric around the importance and relevance of going to school and going to college, right? And I have my strong opinions on that. What is your opinion on that?
So,
For someone who
my background-
studied African American
yes,
studies.
for someone who studied African American studies, but also have a background in education from a formal and informal viewpoint, because I was at the Arizona Science Center for so many years, which is really is technical training.
Yeah.
I advocate for primary education being the parents really pushing students to grow in that realm. But I do not think that college is mandatory. I think it's kind of archaic at this point. There are so many resources that you just don't need it anymore. I know, like in the position I'm in now, nothing I went to school for actually supports what I currently do. My real world applications and my real world jobs that really supported what I did. However, college teaches you advanced reasoning. it teaches you advanced logic, and it
Mm-hmm.
teaches you how to engage in a higher platform
Mm-hmm.
than what you know with your primary education. So I'm always suspicious of people who are against public education, simply because they tend to do the whole "I didn't learn anything." Yes, you did.
Yeah.
You surely did. I was speaking to someone who said they learned nothing about taxes. I'm like, yes, you did. That's sixth grade standard. I know for a fact you learned it because I taught it.
Mm.
So percentages and decimals, it starts in third grade. You learned this stuff. It's just about application.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what's missing from
Mm-hmm.
traditional education is application and how people can make the connection to.
Make the connections. Yeah.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
also think that, particularly with the African American community, we need to get outside this idea of playing catch up
Mm.
with certain fields, particularly STEM fields. We need to start looking for ways to get beyond that and looking for creating fields. That's where our expertise should start to shift, is how do we get to the next level by becoming the creators.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that for me is, you can't do that at a university.
Yeah, yes, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying, but I'll push back gently on it being archaic, right? Because historically we are coming so far behind. We do really have to play catch up, right? Like as I said, meeting you in college, you starting this organization, which forced me to learn about an individual who was so significant in history, right? If we're not in those spaces where we are forced to connect with different individuals and forced to come in contact with different situations and learn different things, right? I feel as though we will lose that opportunity,
Yeah, and it's
you know?
unfortunate that, particularly for the Black community, that that's now become the center stone of where we learn. Because before we had these learning communities
That doesn't
where
exist. We do, yeah.
we had those literary circles. Um, as early as like the 1870s when I started to notice them starting to pop up, and then you saw it through the Harlem Renaissance and continuing on through the Black churches and
Yeah.
that presence and wanting to push people because they weren't allowed within those colleges.
Yes.
And then that's when you get the historical Black colleges, which, I mean, their starting point may not have been as authentic as we would like for them to have been. But for me, it's because if I'm looking at it from a career point and getting Black children where they should be,
Yeah.
there are, like for Arizona, I know it's not true for everybody, for every state, but there are what are called ACES programs. There are magnet programs where you're able to graduate high school with your associate's degree, where you're able to take higher thinking classes without having to go to a 4-year university, without having to step
How
into that.
easily accessible are those?
Oh, they're incredibly accessible and free. So and that's the thing that
I still like my
actually
colleges.
Yeah, I love colleges. And I mean, I'm going to always advocate for someone going that route.
Yeah.
However, if we're looking at from expanding what fields are
Yeah.
represented, I would like to see more so in those technical fields through technical training. But I remember growing up, I always had, and then to hear that kids are really getting through all of high school and some of college without a Black educator.
Yeah.
We need them to go to college so that way they can have that representation within the classroom.
Yeah.
But that's an argument all by itself about Black representation in education.
Yeah. 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 That's
But
a whole
colleges
different.
have to have their place.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have had the opportunities without it.
Definitely. Because I feel as though, I'm able to think a certain way and ask certain questions because of university,
And
right?
the research methods.
The research, exactly. Like even doing this, like us preparing for these topics, the skill set that I learned, helping me to, think critically and all that. It's as you mentioned, is what you're taught,
Yeah.
and I feel as though, because we're so far behind in so many areas, it's another skill set that we can't afford to lose.
Oh, absolutely. I
Yeah.
think it's also the argument of content versus skill.
Mm.
Are we picking up the skills versus the content?
Yeah.
So can you learn the same thing studying African American studies as you would studying classical literature?
Yeah.
My associate's is in art history and classical art history, and I'll say that I'm able to look at things through a more of an artistic lens.
Yeah. Yeah.
But having that American studies background actually teaches me to challenge things beyond my thinking.
Yeah, and that goes to the other, debate. What's the importance of African American studies as a background, right? Because when I speak to parents whose children are now getting into college, I said, please make sure they take a class or two, right? I think we don't place value in it, and because we don't see the importance. And so,
Mhm.
parents do not encourage their children to study. Like, I'm black, like, it's my life. Like, why do I have to study?
And it creates this falsehood of the Black experience being centralized and being a singular
And
experience.
everybody
And
had the
so,
same, yep,
right, and so one of the things I always hate to hear is when people say all skin folk and kinfolk type of ideas,
yeah,
where it's what the Black experience is. And then we talk about it from a global perspective.
yeah, and even much
And
more
then when we get
broader.
into entertainment, the argument of who should be allowed
Yeah,
to play certain roles based off of our understanding that being Black is non-singular. That for me, that's where that study comes in.
yeah,
But I also noticed that transitioning between the first classes I took, my intro to African American classes, up to those higher level classes,
yeah.
there was a shift in how people interacted
Mm,
within the classroom. I felt that from a gender standpoint, in those lower level classes, those ones where people were just doing the intro for the sake of doing the intro,
yeah.
was this kind of resentment
Mm,
between the genders of between African American men and
um,
in women.
mm,
And so conversations became
yeah,
combative and pushed because that people understand the intersectionality of gender and culture and ethnic identity as
yeah.
it relates to being Black, especially at a predominantly white institution.
Yeah, yeah. We had some
Big debate.
big debates in those classes. That's where I met my good friend, Sarah, my best friend. And I'm in one of those classes we were talking about. There was a big debate. I think you were in that class. There was a debate, and Dr. Aubrey was teaching that class. And she had us reading an article about black men marrying white women.
Ooh, yes.
That was a big debate in the class.
Yes.
And so yeah, it was interesting. It was
It was
interesting.
it was
It was interesting.
yeah, it was definitely one of those conversations I do wholeheartedly remember because I remember them pushing this double standard that of the arrival, the idea that well, once you get to a certain position, you're no longer Black women are no longer accessible to you in the workplace as a Black man. So once you get so high,
Yeah, yeah,
all your that excuse of all you are around
yeah,
are white women or non-Black
yeah,
women, which to me is a cop out. But when you push the same idea, well, Black women are dominating in certain other fields, and it's like, oh no, no, you
yeah,
can't do
yeah,
that.
yeah.
So those were really fun conversations. But as you got into higher level classes, I noticed that there was a reverence
Mm,
for all Black experiences.
yeah,
And there was an understanding of the multitude and the dynamics of
yeah.
it. So, and how multidimensional
We are.
we tend to be.
We
And
are.
I found it to be
It
beautiful
was good.
on
It was good.
every aspect. And so I'm thankful to my collegiate
Yeah,
experience.
I totally appreciate it. Well, there we go. That was our conversation about our experience at ASU, African American Studies Department.
And how it's going to shape this conversation.
Yes, yes, yes. Definitely has influenced this conversation. And so we are talking about Nzinga, the Angolan African Warrior Queen, and the series that's being produced by 50 Cent, right?
Yes. He
Words,
calls it a historically based drama.
historically based drama, words that I never thought would be coming out of my mouth. Queen and Zinga and 50 Cent, right? But I think this is great because it really shows how expansive we're getting, right? In the narrative, the stories that are being told about our history, right? And what is our history, right? Because I can remember when Django came out, people were like, okay, not another slave movie.
Yeah, especially with the heavy use of the N-word.
Exactly. It was it had a point that was made.
Mhm.
It was quite entertaining, right? Definitely rooted in historical fact, right? The true story. Um, but I think after a while, people were starting getting frustrated, right? Not another slave movie. So we have Black Panther. We had Black Panther, and then we have
It
a
was
new,
very unifying.
huh?
I felt like Black Panther was quite unifying.
I think so. I think so. I think it was very symbolic and significant in making that connection, right? For those who identify as coming from the African continent, right? And having that background. So it made that connection of or with our continental African brothers and sisters, and those of us in the diaspora, right? You had that connection. Somehow that story tied in with each other. And so coming from that, and then having the Home Warriors, Woman King, I still don't feel comfortable with the title Woman King at all. Um, but coming from that, we have Woman King, and now they haven't mentioned a
No,
release
I know
date.
it's our early spring is what I've
Okay,
seen.
so next year.
Yeah,
Okay.
but that begs to the question for me of timing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm concerned
Why?
about the trope that is being presented. We don't have anything to buffer this idea of warriors. I know that was the concern in the comments of the. I know that even down to the title of Woman King,
Yeah.
and then the fact that the homies had a role in some parts of brutalizations, and then that comes down to the historical narrative of Nzinga. Like,
Yeah.
do we tell the full story
Mm-hmm.
or do we romanticize it
Okay.
in order to soften the characters? So I don't know. I'm a little. I'm excited. I'm
Yeah.
in. Oh, I'm so excited.
Yeah.
But I'm a little concerned about the perception
Of.
Black women,
Uh-huh.
about the fact that we, in recent years, I would say the last 3 years,
Yeah.
I've noticed an influx of comments
Uh-huh.
about how Black women can't be soft,
Oh.
Black women have to be in charge, and that we're non-submissive. I hate that term, by the way. That we don't align to modern or classic
Yeah.
ideas of femininity.
Yeah. Yeah.
So having two major productions
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
kind of highlight
Yeah.
what people keep pushing as this trope, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I am concerned about how it's going to be produced.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's
If it's going to show that balance, right? Is it going to, and correct me if I'm wrong, are you asking if, is going to show a balance of, yes, the strength of the black woman, which we all know, right? What I don't like is that independent, that strong black woman
I don't
phrase.
like
Don't
that.
like it. Don't like
I
it. Don't
don't
like
like
it. Don't
that. I
like it.
like the term resilient.
Resilient. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We are definitely.
I just don't like the
Definitely.
whole idea that we can't survive without
Yeah.
a counterpart. I don't like that.
And,
Yeah. So
yeah.
I have issues with that whole
Yes. Yeah.
strong,
So at
independent.
least we're definitely on the same page in regards. So we're not on that. We don't need, yes. Yeah. Okay.
That's not my
Yes.
alignment.
And so having movies that really celebrates the strength of the black woman, right? Is that going to be is that going to have a negative backlash, right?
Yeah, I am concerned about that because does it create more legwork for us
Yeah.
today to have to depict ourselves as more demure?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
think that there also becomes that gap between understanding royalty during that time
Yeah.
period and inherited voyeurism
Hmm.
versus what we saw during the actual slave trade in the Caribbean and the United States, where it was more of a taking up of a mantle that had to be done.
That had to be
That
done.
had
It
to
was
be
out of necessity.
out of
It
necessity
was out of
versus
necessity.
inherent
Yeah.
leadership. So,
Yeah.
I think that's going to be something that has to be a conversation.
Well, in the sense of inherited in the sense of being warriors,
Yes.
right? That was out
Yes.
of necessity. But because many of African societies, cultures are matrilineal based, right? Where they are entire society cultures that are dominated, not dominated, but run and led by women, right? You still had them women um leadership,
Hmm.
female leadership, but in the sense of warriors and having to defend your kingdom and having to defend, your kingdom in the battlefield. I think we may have to draw that line. And your concern really is valid because those are the comments I'm getting from certain men, right, in certain spaces where they feel as though this elevated, right? showcasing of women in that way, it further, what did they say? Oh, well, no, they have um another reason to say how, they're strong and independent and they don't need a man and that kind of thing,
Right.
right? So it's like Hollywood is supporting and further enhancing
Yeah.
that stereotype, I think
Yeah,
it is.
and it does. And I don't want people to think that the time period and the location in which Zinga had really developed and honed in her leadership was not absent of men. And I think it's important that we understand that it was not absent of men. Her brother was alive for a good portion.
Yeah,
Um, and with that, you have to understand that her lineage is royalty.
yeah,
She was a legitimate heir to the throne. It wasn't that she kicked out all men and she was, nope, if a woman can't do it, then no one can do it type of mentality. It was a part of her upbringing.
yeah.
And I think that that's where I'm hoping
That's
that
emphasized.
that is included because
Yeah,
in my research of it, it is saying that they transition between her early princesship, which she wasn't really called a princess.
yeah,
So language becomes an issue within it already, but it talks about how she comes to power. Um, I think where we're going to see some conflict is that unknown of what happened to her brother, because
yeah,
there are two stories.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I wonder which story to
Did
tell.
she commit? Did he commit suicide, or was he poisoned?
My
Right,
sister.
by his sister, which is possible. Which is possible.
But we also have to understand where that original narrative came from with the
Yeah,
poisoning. It came from the
but
Portuguese.
and yeah, can we talk about the Portuguese?
Oh,
We're gonna talk about the
yeah,
Portuguese,
talk about
please.
the
We have to talk
Portuguese.
about the Portuguese. So, Newbert, Angola. What do you mean by Angola? Yes, she is originally from Angola. Um,
The territory of
the
Angola. Yeah.
territory of, yes. So not Congo though.
She was in war with the Congo when the Portuguese first arrived. And so there's a shared history there. There is definitely a shared history. And when we talk about the current mapping of the African continent, um, that does lead to some issues because we're talking about nations that had city states that were actively in war when the Portuguese came in,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
and they utilized that. And I think that that is a whole conversation
It
in
is.
itself.
It is. It is. So just if you had not signed in at the beginning, so there is a little bit of an error with the names. So I may not be able to change it right this minute, but it will be edited at the end. So her name is Victoria Williams and not Zoe Sarko. So because we have the two cameras, we had to make some adjustments with, yeah. So I cannot make the change right this minute. Um, so in talking about the Portuguese, right? I think this learning about Queen Nzinga, right? Originally from Angola. You Newbert, let me know if there's any concerns you have with that. We're talking about her becoming or being a warrior out of necessity, right? An African queen warrior out of necessity. And there's a lot of complaints within the diaspora, within the black community, right? um, Due to them having there being tension between the African and black community. One of the complaints, right, or the rhetoric that you hear is, well, they sell us out. All right. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be here, that kind of thing, right? And I reading, and I'm really hoping that 50 Cent is able to really highlight the reasoning behind the role that she played in the slave trade, right? One, they did put up a fight. We learned that a lot of these tribes, it was not a welcome party, right? They did put up a fight, and the concept of blackness or Africanness was not the same way we think of it right now. Says these are tribes who were warring against each other.
Right.
So it's not like they sold their cousin off to the
Right.
Portuguese.
And I think Mike that those I saw the same comments. And what I think the people don't understand is it is the issue of the different statehoods and the different tribes.
Yeah.
And when you look at the comments, you do see the whole "this is coming from my group. She's a part of my culture." And so, if we take away the idea of the diaspora, take away the Pan Africanism of it, then we have to look at it as during that time period. When we're talking about 100 years into colonial power, anyways,
Yeah.
they were actively at war, and slavery in that context of war was a real thing. They
Yeah.
were not the idea they sold off my people. They were not selling off their own
Their own. Yeah.
people. So it was one of those casualty of war situations where they were actually trading for weapons, not good weapons. Most of them malfunctioned, but they were trading for weapons in order to fight what they thought was a common enemy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they did not see those colonial powers as a common enemy because they had been fighting each other for
So long. For so long. Exactly.
So I think that's important to highlight.
Yeah. 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 And so I'm hoping that, people, that rhetoric, that story that we tell, kind of loses value as we see these movies
And
and
we
these shows.
justify the horrendous treatment of blacks throughout the diaspora.
Yeah.
As it relates to the transatlantic slave trade
Mm.
by saying, well, you guys did it to yourselves.
Oh, you've heard that?
Oh, yes. Did it to yourselves.
Oh,
I
haven't heard that one.
You sold each other out, especially the last couple of years. Those comment sections,
Yeah.
people sitting in their homes all happy and
Oh,
protected by
that's
COVID
deep.
quarantine.
That's
You
deep.
did it to yourselves. You should
Okay.
be happy that you made it here.
I've heard that part, right?
So
I've heard
it's
that
just
part.
twofold of the benefit of slavery.
Yeah.
But I think that it also comes into when we talk about figures like Zinger and the influence of European powers during that time period and the tricks they played and the manipulation that went in. They did not come out as explorers. I think that we need to stop calling that age completely the age of discovery. It was the age of economic prowess because those ships had weapons.
Yeah.
Why would you show up with weapons if you're just on
To
the
conquer.
discovery?
Yeah.
You were there to conquer.
To conquer.
And so this idea that they were just these missions that were out there
Yeah.
to expand Christianity, no, it was there for economic prowess. And they saw an opportunity through those wars that were all taking place.
But they used the Jesuits. How do you pronounce it? Jesuits? Christianity. Jesuits. Yes. Jesuits. Jesuits.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Jesuits. So they were used actually because she converted to Christianity, right? Out of I think it was strategic, right? So she converted at some point, and so she was still practicing her African spirituality practices, and then on the side dabbling in Christianity.
She did a very public baptism.
She did a public baptism, got the Portuguese name Anna de Souza. And but what I've learned is that she was well aware that these missionaries were being used as spies by the Portuguese, right? So some of them became part of her encampment, hence the strategy to show that okay, we're a partnership. But they're also she was also aware that they couldn't be fully trusted. And I don't know if you've seen the post recently, and there's a post that somebody shared which stated that Christianity was spread by Africans across the continent, right? And it really, really bothered me. And I think this story is another perfect example of that goes against that statement. I'm going to show it to you afterwards. Because it went semi-viral. Like everybody's posting about it. People are like, "Oh my God, that is so true. Amen to that." Africans spread Christianity across the continent. But yes, yes, and so just studying Nzinga's story, you can tell that it was the Portuguese missionaries who were being used to help with the collaboration and establishment of relationships between, the Ndongo kingdom and the Portuguese, right? So the Portuguese they they might have an easy time, and you can tell that it took a period of time really to get a good stronghold on Angola.
Yeah, I think what threw them off was the fact that Angola, by and large, even prior to their initial wars with the Congo, had a sense of political intelligence that was
Yeah.
just
Oh yeah.
superior,
Yeah. And they talked about it.
highly,
The
highly
missionaries talked
superior.
about it. The
And
missionaries talked about
yeah,
it.
and because it was a
Yeah.
matriarchal society,
Yeah.
she was fully trained
Yeah.
in understanding how to negotiate.
Yeah.
She fully understood the gravity of being able to enter a space as in her female
Yeah.
form and saying that she's of royalty while dealing with the issue of ongoing wars,
Yeah.
issues within her own family, which I'm pretty sure they're going to highlight in the series.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
that's going to be the drama part of
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
and then having to deal with this group of people who truly did not value their culture or their practices,
Yeah.
and having to reassert herself. I think that's where we're going to see that relationship. I'm going to be interested to see how the Portuguese are depicted
Yeah.
in this
Yeah.
um, because if we really look at the full story of Zinga and the complexity of who she was,
Yeah.
the fact that she did have a child that was killed
That was killed. Yep.
and that
And
she was sterilized
yeah, by her
by
brother.
her brother.
She can't have any more children.
Does
Yep.
that further, if they highlight that storyline too much, does that further the tension
I
of
know.
this animosity?
Yeah, between the gender.
So
That'd
that
be
was for
interesting.
me was is she, because of course you have that storyline of that narrative that she might have killed them or
Yeah.
that she wasn't a part of the lineage of being able to take the throne
Take
as
the
a
throne.
woman. But I think that that's going to be a storyline that they're really going to have to flesh out
Yeah.
and understand some
Yeah.
of the implications.
Yeah. 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 Like how, because I think as a community, we're so passionate about these stories. Like, you know, how much are we able to, look at it as historical narrative, historical reference, and how much of it we're going to have an attachment to it. Because
Right.
even with Woman King, we're already getting emotional about it.
We're very
Already getting emotional about it. You know?
One of the things I noted and it kept coming up for me was, are we going to enter a realm of fictionalizing our historical figures
But it,
by because with CRT, the anti-CRT movement is really gaining grounds. Arizona just pushed through new legislation.
what is CRT?
So critical race theory.
Oh, I'm like CRT.
Yeah. And
I know that.
this anti-studying of things from a racial position. These are who's going to be able to access these real stories? Is it going to be a tutor in college? Is it going to be? Let's be honest.
If they go to college,
they were getting it.
Yes,
but not
they were.
everybody is
They were.
Victoria.
I know. I know.
And that's unfortunate. We can't replicate ourselves. And we were in an education system that did not allow room for that multifaceted education.
Yeah.
My concern is if we get too far into it, because 50 Cent made the comment of this is going to be like the movie 300. Okay, well, that has a lot of historical inaccuracies, a lot.
Yeah.
That you could no longer consider it to be historical fiction. I would be concerned that they're going to get so caught up in the storyline and making it into sheer entertainment that the historical nature of Zinga is going to get lost. And I'm down to, I will say, I appreciate the casting.
Yes, I'm glad he's producing with a Nigerian actress. Yes, and it's being filmed in South Africa. Love that.
Yes,
I'm excited for that part.
I'm very excited for that. And if we look at his co-producers and directors, she's going to be directing as well. Her work is truly rested in Nollywood.
Yes,
and really looking at those Nigerian films.
Which means we might get the respect of Africans, right? Because Black Panther, I heard there were some Africans who were like, really? Right? The accent really, and that it was, as much as we loved it, culturally, a lot of people who I have spoken to, I heard that they kind of snickered in certain elements of Black Panther with the accents and stuff like that.
But then we're also talking about fiction.
It is fiction. That is true. That is true. That is true.
be more upset if they gave Zinga a British accent
That would be
for this
disturbing.
or an over exaggerated
Yeah.
what is considered to be a universal perception of an African accent
Yeah.
than truly doing
Yeah.
their research. Again, it gets down to that language aspect because I know you taught English and language arts and understand the importance of word choice.
Yeah.
Word choice becomes so important when we're studying African
And
American
it helps. Yeah.
African history.
It helps to tell the story.
Yeah, because we have to realize they were not speaking English.
Yeah.
So a lot of the terms do not translate
Yeah.
the same way, down to that calling her a princess.
Yeah.
That undermines her and her role within her family, and the fact that she was called upon by her father and by her brother to represent them in certain
Yeah.
ways. But the one scene I'm excited to see,
What?
the Portuguese meeting.
Oh, where she sat
Yes,
on.
it's
That's dope.
problematic and one of the most epic historical
But
moments
you,
of all time.
it shows how brilliant she was.
Yes,
How brilliant she was. She's like, you are
it's an
gonna
epic
respect
moment.
me despite, in spite of, you're gonna respect me. And
It is
so,
such an epic historical moment.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's oh, okay. Sorry. And yeah, and I think I will definitely look forward to that scene. So the part we're talking about is um there was a meeting between Queen Zinga and the Portuguese. And so traditionally, when the Portuguese are meeting an African representative, an ambassador, the king, they will have their seats. They'll be seated. They would have a mat placed in front of them, and they would welcome the African representative or ambassador, the king themselves, to kneel in front of them. And Zinga, Queen Nzinga, recognizing that they were expecting her to do the same, called on one of her slaves or sis. I don't like the word slave, but
enslaved.
one of her enslaved.
Yeah, because they were enslaved.
They were enslaved. They were enslaved, right? And had them kneel down on their legs, knees and legs. Yes, forming a chair. And she sat on them, right? She sat on them, and basically she said, "No, we're gonna see each other, face each other eye to eye." Um, and then you're gonna speak to me
Yeah,
like respectful,
it's that scene for me is by far one of my favorite historical moments to tell my
yeah,
students about creating space, but also understanding the position you put other people in when you create your own space.
yeah, yeah,
I think that is definitely twofold when we talk about the dehumanization the
yeah,
person is turned into an ornament. Um, in order to make this political statement,
yeah,
the political statement was necessary. Was
yeah,
there another way to go about it? Possibly. But in that moment, that was the best thing that she could have done in order to really say, we're here.
yeah,
You're
yeah,
not gonna play
yeah,
the mind games with me.
yeah,
I'm just as important, I'm just as intelligent, and I'm just as capable as you are.
yeah,
And so for me, it goes back to that concept of our good friend Richard Cruz said it once. He was about creating space at the table.
hmm,
Don't just create your space at the table. Make sure you actually have a seat.
yeah, yeah,
Um, I think that that's where mentally that we create those visualizations of what that means historically for us. Of not only when we're talking about the role of African kingdoms in the transatlantic slave trade, but also for um, our own understanding of what it means to be a part of the
hmm,
conversation.
yep, yeah. It's yeah. That's critical. So here's my question for you: What does it? How do you think? What do you think is the most significant in regards to the fact that it's 50 Cent who's making, a film like this, right? Is this something that, you know, that we should, dig deeply about, coming from where he's come from, the type of songs he's sung,
Mm-hmm.
the type of artist he was, and now making a movie or a series like this. Is this a reflection of who he is, or is it him seeing an opportunity to tell a story
In my own digging,
that may be significant?
I'll say I was in high school when 50 Cent first came out, and I was a huge, massive fan.
Was a fan. Was a fan.
Was
Yes.
a fan, and then he became far more commercialized, and then he started having these public relationships, and I noticed a certain level of hostility towards Black women that I did not like. Even down to who he chooses to argue with tends to be Black women, and so that already has a bad taste in my mouth. However, if I take my personal feelings out of it and look at his growth as a professional and as a mogul and what he's done with his production company, he has told some incredible stories and done so very, very well. Production value, the investment that he put into it. And from what I've seen outside of the comment about 300, he truly is invested in telling the real story because he finds her story, like I said, to be epic. He finds her to be legendary and worthy of good production. And he said he really put a lot of thought into when the story was brought to him as to who he would work with. And I think that based off of what I've seen, he's put together a team that is worthy of her story. I would just caution towards the drama aspect, and whether or not certain things are going to be downplayed or dramatized. Especially since we don't have the ability within certain spaces to defend and provide a historical narrative correct.
Well, we all have access to the same information regards to her story.
That's true. That's why higher education is important, especially critical thinking.
We all have access to that information, so we can go back and be like, okay, what is that all about? But I was really, really humored because when Woman King came out, oh my gosh, right? So certain parts of the internet, Black men, some of them, right? In looking at who produced that movie, right, had a lot to say, because I think they were
she was too light.
Yes, one was a light-skinned woman and the other one is white. It's two women, right? So they're reinforcing this narrative of Hollywood,
I even saw the comment of don't let white women hype your ass up.
Exactly. It's cold out there. It's cold out there. So now that it's 50 Cent. Right?
It gives validity to the story, apparently.
So how do we attack 50 Cent in telling another historically relevant story about an African warrior queen? I would love to know that. Like, how do you position an argument?
Because a man said that really is the reality of it. When women highlight women, it's always going to be.
Or maybe, no, this is what the word, there are new words that are being used right now, right? You're either a simp or a whatever.
And
right? So are Black men gonna call 50 Cent a simp? Like, I don't know, is that like an accurate term? Would they say, you're simping right now because you create a story, right, that further elevates, or tells a story about remind these Black women of how strong they are, right? And could be.
Unfortunately, and it breaks my heart because I think it reaffirms for me that Black women historically, not even historically, I would say just before colonialism, had to start to create their own systems of protections because we were no longer seen as worthy of protection. And it breaks my heart that I've seen people that I respect and people we've gone to college with, who I know have a higher level of thinking, just respout some of this information that somehow Black women in particular are disillusioned about our ability. And that, for me, they should have seen that movie and gone, kudos, like about time that we celebrated Black women in a historical lens. And it really does make you take pause and go, wow. But we have to also remember that is a minute group of men. And they're just very loud. They're just a very loud group of men. And of course you do get, and I hate this phrase, but pygmies that go in, and there's those women who want to validate those men by saying, I would never, ever do this. You would out of necessity. If it meant you and your children and your family
Yeah.
against a common enemy, you most definitely would become a
Do
warrior.
what is needed.
You absolutely, yeah,
What is needed.
absolutely.
What is needed.
But I also think that 50 Cent, because of his criticism of black women, gives for those black men some type of validity
Mm.
because he has been
Yeah.
and he can say, okay, well, this one is okay.
Yeah. Yeah. But maybe then they'll embrace this one and accept it. They'll embrace
And I'm
it.
okay with that.
Yeah.
If we get there, I always say it's multiple.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
that's what it takes, they need to go through a raggedy back road full of dustiness. Let them, as long as they get there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's how I have to see it. Is I want them to get there. I want them to see the beauty that is the story.
And it for me it's double edged, right? Because on the one end you're seeing in popular culture, this troping of the strong black woman, right? But then we are now celebrating movies that really is reinforcing that, right? And my thing is that I really hope one that there's a balancing of it, because Zinga, for example, she was very much female, she was very much feminine, she wanted to have another child, right?
Yes.
When she showed up in front of the Portuguese, she showed up in her clothing, her best clothing, her jewelry, right?
Adorned.
She was adorned as a woman, right? And so for me, I really don't want the conversation to be just about the strength and the warrior element, but more so this is a feminine woman, right, who has the ability to be a fighter, a really good strategic, logically thinking fighter, right? And as women, we are both. As women, we are both. And I don't understand how it is that other women in other societies, right, have the ability to weep and cry, but also show that she's Wonder Woman, right? I don't understand how, other women can have those, and the black woman is, well, either she's this or trying to be this.
We
And
create those singular viewpoints.
yeah,
And I don't like
exactly.
that at all. Like, how is it even historically? We're okay with shield maidens and the Vikings and the Nordic women being perceived as these. Oh my gosh, they fought along their men, and they're heralded as like that's how women
I love the
should
Vikings.
be.
I love the Vikings.
Right?
I love it.
Incredible. The shield maidens were just as strong. And historically, we've noticed that they're almost just as big.
Yeah.
But they were mothers. They were allowed to have that feminine nature.
Yeah.
And why aren't women, black women in particular, and women of African descent allowed this thing to exist?
Yeah, yeah. And I think the men who are complaining that we're so strong want us to be in those submissive roles, right? And so it's they're saying, well, you guys think you want, you're all that and you're all strong and blah blah blah. You don't need a man, blah blah blah.
But what does that mean?
But exactly. So for me, it's like we can be both.
We can
And
be
don't
both.
feel as though us having that ability and we have stories that reminds us of that in any way is emasculating, because I feel as though some men are like, well, then what is our position, where's our space, like, how do we be a man alongside
To offer that still
exactly
that same protection and support.
Yeah.
I think that we have to understand what the definition they're using for submission.
Yeah.
I don't like this idea that you're the treatment that comes from a child who's just supposed to fall in line. Do not align with that ideology.
Yeah.
It's not a part of who I am. However, when it comes to leadership, I have no problem following. We follow leads.
We know how to follow leads. Well, not the black man's lead, like
apparently.
We know how to follow the boss's work.
Yeah,
but not yes.
But when you find that leader, what you do is what I say is like it's like an organization.
Yeah.
You have your CEO, your CFOs, and you got to figure out where your line is. It's okay for him to be the CEO. I'm perfectly proud of that. But there's a delegation that goes out.
Yeah.
And there needs to be a trust.
Yeah.
And I trust almost every black man I encounter. I very rarely have poor interactions. Very, very rarely. I'm very proud of the
relationship. Oh, you trust every
I said almost. I've had some music.
Yes, yeah.
However, I feel like the men that I know and I've invested time in, my
Yeah.
friendships,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
men that I care about,
Yeah.
those are the men who have offered protection.
Yes.
Those are the
Yeah.
men who have shielded me
Yeah.
in one way or another. Rather, it is hyping us up during the Nzinga meetings,
Yeah.
but not allowing anyone to talk about us behind our
Yeah.
backs.
Yeah.
There are certain levels of protection that have to be in place.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where that conversation has to become a little bit more fluid.
Yeah. And I agree with that. I agree with that. It's I think about the circle of men that are around me, and I can say that definitely, because we do also choose who we allow in our spaces too, right?
Absolutely.
We are intentional with who we allow in our spaces, and those who we allow in our spaces is because we can let our shield down, right, and feel comfortable knowing that they can protect us, and defend us, right? And so I I I I don't I want men to hear that, right? And feel as though they can still be the leaders and still be masculine, and still be representation of manhood in the face of and in the presence of women who, right, have certain strengths and abilities, right? It's not a zero sum game, right? That came around. It's not a zero, that came around with the Europeans clearly, because they, in the writings of the Portuguese, they described Zinga in very masculine terms, right? The same way they're doing it with Serena Williams, the same way they tried to do it with Michelle Obama, right? And so we need to be careful, and that's why I think these stories are so important, because it shows us, elements of parts of who we were before westernization and colonization, right? How do we separate and parse the difference between our understanding of our gender differences, right? And how we should interact with each other, right? What is it that we've learned that is as a result of colonization, westernization, Christianity, right? And what is it that is really something that we should really take be aware of, that is based on true cultural history and where we're from.
And really expanding that idea of what womanhood
And what that
is.
looks like.
Yeah,
What that looks
absolutely.
like.
So my question for you,
Oh, a question. She has a
and this
question
is
for
a
me.
really, yeah, I do. I always want to ask this question to someone.
Okay.
What historical figure do you think we should highlight next? So for me, it would be Tai, because she was heralded as for her beauty.
Oh.
And they literally paved roads and created streets so she would never have to step in dirt. Like like the worship of her beauty, to me, is amazing.
But that would make sense because I think are we still in the era where black women are not considered to be attractive? Are we, have we gone past that?
I don't feel like we have.
Because in a way we have, but I
In a
think
way, we have.
in a way we have. It's more
Yes.
but it's more about our bodies now, right? It's the body thing.
It's a body thing.
It's the body
It's
thing.
over sexualization.
It's over, exactly. So I guess it's recognizing our sexuality in a weird way.
Yeah, we're able to own it without owning it.
Yeah,
But they want us to
because
be sexy without being sexy. If that makes sense, they want us to be out there and present ourselves in these particular style of body.
oh my gosh, yes.
But I also think that there's an exoticism of it. You
Which
either have to be fair skinned or much so someone of my complexion, even with my body shape, would not be as desirable as someone who was lighter than me or darker.
are you serious?
That middle
Well,
ground.
I must notice that a lot of white men, when they marry black, they marry like dark skin. I've noticed that.
Yeah,
like they
it's the
go
contrast.
dark,
Yeah, it's the
dark.
contrast.
I think you fit in there. Like,
I'm not talking about feedback, not even receiving them.
Oh, really?
You would look better if
You're
you're
darker.
darker.
That is interesting.
Yeah, I have a younger sister who's much darker than I am.
Yes.
Instead, we all call her little chocolate drop. Stunning. Look almost exactly like me.
Yes.
But people find her to be more beautiful than I am because she's darker.
That is
But I also have
fascinating.
older sisters who are lighter than me who are always considered to be more beautiful because they were lighter.
Yes.
And so that dynamic has always been present of exoticism.
Yeah.
It was in the black community.
So you're in that weird middle.
I'm in that weird middle.
Oh, that is interesting. Somebody let me know. But I know I have recognized when white men choose to marry black women, it's the dark, like they go dark. I've definitely recognized that. And so for me, it's because of the era we're in culturally, where I think it's the definitely hypersexualized. I don't know if like is there an general acceptance of the beauty of the black woman, or is it just an open um understanding that she's desired sexually? Like I don't know, man. Is it the same thing? Is there a difference?
So
I don't know.
here's my thing. I feel like they desire black bodies within the context of white skin.
Hmm.
So they like the Kim Kardashians.
Oh.
They like the BBLs.
Yeah.
They like the over exaggerated. Not every black woman is shaped
Yeah.
like that.
That's true.
And so I think there is very much so in our desire to be presented and more desired by black men in particular. I found that it overcorrected itself. We were going through a phase of like not wanting us at all, to wanting us for a particular reason, and in a particular way, and with a particular mindset, and with a particular spirit about us.
And you know what's, and I think that's triggered by popular culture. It's not controlled by us.
Yeah.
You know,
definitely.
it is triggered.
The narrative at all.
We're not at all. I know at all, and so it's again we're the direction we're going as a community. Our mindset and how we respond to each other really is directed by a larger it's controlled by a system that is outside of us, which is scary.
Yeah.
Which is scary.
It is scary. Like it's down to seeing these comments of, and I hate that we put so much weight on social media, but oftentimes that shapes the world around us. When you have men who feel like they're entitled to certain women, and feel that the need to correct them or to criticize, unwarranted and unquestioned, I find that to be very telling, because when you go to the comment sections of other women, they are not the same. I feel like still again, black women are still the least protected, while secretly being the most desired.
Oh my God, that is big there. That is big there. That is big there. And in an unhealthy way.
Very unhealthy way.
Mostly good, right? If it's coming from the right group of people that you
want it to be celebrated.
Yes.
But I don't think we want it.
It's in an unhealthy way. And the question is, what can we do to change that? Now I see Brother Trimika, I'm gonna read your comments in a second. But how do we it's as I for me it's we just sit there and things happen to us as a community, as a culture, and it's like okay. At what point do we like, and that's why I feel that these movies are significant, because it shows, I want to say us as a community, but it shows women taking matters in their own hands. Like even in, and I'll let you respond. Another woman that was compared to Nzinga was the Ethiopian women, right? The reason why the Christianity, the form of Christianity that we accept today, was not able to make impact in Ethiopia was because of the Ethiopian nuns. The women were like, no. They argued with the missionaries and the Jesuits, right? And insisted that their Orthodox Christianity that they have had since the beginning of time is what's going to remain the same. So it's not accidental that Ethiopia has one type of Christianity and the rest of us are doing something else, right? And so it's that reinforcing of women playing a significant role. And I feel that these shows are, these movies that are coming out, is so telling. Is it a sign? Like, is it gonna have to be black women saying, you know what? No, not anymore.
I feel like we've tried to assert ourselves, but I don't think in the best way.
Yeah.
I don't think we've tried to shape our image or shape public, and I hate this, but we shouldn't have to shape our own image for public consumption. But and we are the only group that has to do
We
that.
do though.
But we have to. At this point, it is a matter
Yeah.
of survival and protection.
Yeah.
One of the things that I always say is you can't want the black version of me modified. Like they want black women, but as long as their hair is pinky. They want the women with the dreads
Mm.
and the locks, but as long as it's a certain texture.
Mm.
They want the women who are black, but only if there's a direct lineage
Mm.
to the African continent.
Oh, you really?
Oh, absolutely. Like there's a value in being from the continent and being first generation here or second
That is
generation.
new to me. I'm in my own world,
There's just like
clearly.
this idea of being more authentically black.
Oh.
And that is an ideology that we do need to step away from if we are
By
truly
whom
going to
though?
ever.
Are we talking about all men
Oh no,
or?
no, I feel like it's that same group of
Okay,
black
okay,
men
okay.
who try to define what is
But
black and
maybe
womanhood.
because there's this perception that those from the continent, maybe more submissive,
More
more
traditional.
traditional. And there is some truth to that. I do have girlfriends who are African Americans and they're like, it's like, let me put it this way, right? We as women, we have expectations of men. We do. We have expectations of men, right? If we are making a certain amount, we would like them to be of us making a certain amount. To be a man, what does it mean to be a man? We want you to be able to protect us and cover us and and lead us and guide us, right? And so in return, what expectations should the man have of
Yep.
us?
And I think that that's a fair question. But then I always ask the question: protection of what and how? What is that protection? What does it look like today? Because then that helps us navigate where we fall in line. What kind of protection are we looking for? What kind of support are we looking for? Is it just that financial side of things? Because Black women are, by and
No, when I
large,
say protection, and not necessarily financial.
yeah. So and that's what we have to define is what does that mean? Because
Yeah.
there is a disconnect in the definition of what that looks like. And so
Yeah.
when women make a certain amount, do you want does that mean have to make just as much as you or more, or are they just bringing something to the table? And I think that, or are they offering protection in a different way? Are they protecting your soul from the things that make you drown out each day if you are the higher earner?
Yeah.
Are they making your life easier? I think that spiritual protection is far more important than physical protection in some cases,
Yeah.
depending on where you live and what kind of lifestyle you're in.
Yeah.
And I think that has to be that conversation. But then also comes down to, like you said, how do you form your circle? Who is a part of this circle? Who are these men that you are bringing into your world, and what kind of women are these men bringing into their world? And how are we negotiating our roles?
Yeah.
I don't think there's any singular answer
Yeah.
to it. Because there are going to be different factors, especially when you start to add in things like economics
Yeah.
and socio-political viewpoints and religion, and child rearing.
Yeah. It was easier back then. Like in those societies, and I'm thinking about, during the Ndongo kingdom, in the Ndongo kingdom, during the 1500s, right?
There's
This,
clear
there was clear
definitions.
definitions. We understood what our roles are, right? But now I think there's tension because, with all these factors that are playing against us, we have not had the chance to have that conversation to really discuss what does that look like? How do we complement each other?
Right.
Right? How do we support each other? What does it mean for us to be mates and with each other?
And getting away from that cookie cutter idea that women are supposed to behave a certain way, or
Yeah.
men are supposed to bring certain things to the table or perform a certain way. I think that we really need to step away from that and look at it as the complementary aspect.
Exactly. Yep. I love that. I love that. I love it. So let me read, Brother Chumi, because this film brings up some very serious discussions that we must have as a community to heal. The role of the Black woman historically and today, the role of our brothers and sisters on the continent in the slave trade. Do we hold the African accountable similarly to the Arab and European? Hmm. What was the position of our traditional African spiritualities in the slave trade? Was it a similar position as Islam or Christianity? Can femininity and warriorship exist together? Yes, definitely.
Oh,
Absolutely.
okay.
Who's allowed to tell?
Oh, that's a good question.
That's good. Well,
Are we gatekeeping certain stories?
no, we're not. And we haven't been telling our
Should
own
we?
stories. Now we're trying to.
Should we gatekeep? And
Y-
who should be gatekeeping?
For me, it's all about identity, right? For those who like, it's like who's black, right? And who should be telling the black
Yeah.
story, right? Do you,
Is it enough for the lead character to be Nigerian?
as opposed to
Angolan? Because that was a couple of comments about that. Why didn't you pull an Angolan actor actress?
that?
Yeah, I was surprised by that.
I'm gonna stay out of that
Because
conversation.
I know that was a conversation with Black Panther, with African
Yeah,
Americans, and
yeah, yeah. It
being
gets
upset
dicey.
about as many European blacks that were in the film
Yeah.
representing, in their opinion, Black people and Black culture.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
who gets to gatekeep these
yeah.
stories that are historically from the
Well, there's a
continent?
difference between gatekeeping and really telling the story, right? There's a difference
Mhm.
between gatekeeping as in protecting, right? Controlling, as opposed to who's the one that's allowed within that space, right?
Yeah.
To be the one to express and tell that story.
Would we be as critical if 50 Cent had tapped a white producer or a director?
Well, judging by how certain spaces are responding to Woman King, yeah. I think it's like, is it important that Barack Obama married a black woman?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I think it's amazing that his co-producer is Nigerian. Now, for the Africans, or there can be a a debate as to whether she should be Angolan or not. But for me, it's like, hey, it's African.
And I think that's
I'll
the
take that.
stance that a lot of African Americans take is
Yeah,
they're African.
I'll
We're
take
good.
it. So yeah, but I can tell you there's some movies told about African American historical figures that were played by black British actors,
Mhm.
and certain parts were like, "Whoa, okay,
Like
why we couldn't find a black American to play
most
that
recent
part?"
Martin movie.
Martin who?
The Martin Luther King movie.
Really? Was played
Yeah.
by whom?
Yeah, it was what was his name? Oh my goodness, I'm gonna draw a blank. He's so handsome. Um, but he's a British actor, and no one knew he was British until he did interviews.
For me, look, as a Pan Africanist, I'm like,
Exactly. If I could look at
you auditioned, you were picked for the part.
yes. Accents,
Are you?
really getting good accents?
I don't know.
I don't know if it's worth the fight.
It's
When
we have
to
way
be in
too
this
much.
space,
But look, there's some, there's
yeah,
some people who think it's
there's
important.
definitely some nuances to
There,
it.
there's some people who think it's important that if you're, telling a story of someone who was born in a space, that whoever's representing them.
But I think we also learn,
So
particularly from African Americans, particularly, that just because someone is born in a space does not make them a part of the space.
true.
Because
True.
we have those people who are phenotypically
Yeah.
a part of the community,
But
choose,
yeah.
and then it is a choice to not be a part of the culture
Yeah.
or the identity, and that is a concern, especially when it comes to monetizing
And making
on
money
the
out.
identity.
Oh. Yeah.
Especially when certain people have strategically not had black children.
Are we talking about anybody in particular?
50 Cent in particular. So the fact that he
doesn't have any black children?
the oldest one he doesn't have anything to do with, but all his other children are biracial.
Oh.
And it's intentional. He said that.
Oh.
That's what he prefers. And we have to get into that idea of.
And then he's doing something. Okay, now I feel whole.
Yeah,
oh, this is interesting.
It was part of a whole interview, and I was just like, I was so taken aback by it because I loved that man with all my full heart and soul, and would have given him beautiful chocolate babies. But he don't want me. Maybe if I was a little bit.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he.
Maybe he found himself. He's making up for it.
Maybe. I mean, there's always hope. But like I said, even if we take the dusty road to get there, I'm happy you got there. That's all I care about is that you got there. And that this story has the opportunity to be told.
And we're telling the story. Oh, God. We're telling the story. We tell the story. Maya, that's where things get lost with some black men. They are intimidated by our ability to lead and command space. But if they provide that safe space, protection, and appreciation, we have no problem submitting.
Yeah,
Touche, Maya.
I almost fully agree with the exception of the intimidation part. I don't think it's necessarily an intimidation. I don't think that even some black men are intimidated. I think that it comes from a lack of understanding of the need of the shift as to why black women are now excelling in certain facets of their lives that they are. And I think that once they understand how we got here, there will be a more of an acceptance. I think that would be my only modification to that. I'm not sure if I ever met a man that was intimidated by me. Maybe I'm wrong. You would have that outside perspective of who I am. I can't look at myself from an outside perspective. But
Men, would you find Victoria to be intimidating?
I don't think anyone would find me to be an intimidating person.
I would say that because of the not knowing how to respond, right? How do they how do they respond, right? Is it because if you're a type of individual woman who is not the type of woman that you're used to being around, and so therefore they may not know how to engage you, right? May not feel that they're able to meet you at your level, right? I would use.
I would use overwhelmed.
Oh, okay, all right.
Because intimidating gives an illusion that there's a fear there.
Okay.
And I don't think they're afraid of us.
I don't. So.
I don't think so. They wouldn't talk to me do sometimes if they were afraid.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be as bold in their comments if they were afraid. I think they are overwhelmed by some of the things that are brought to the table with high accomplishing women.
Yeah.
And I think that for them, especially when you're looking at traditional sense of what a woman brings to the table, and you're adding in even more. Imagine coming to a regular Tuesday night dinner and it looks like Thanksgiving. And you're expecting the casserole and they're showing up with the full spread.
Yeah.
That's a lot to take in.
It's oh.
I like to say I'm baffling.
That's word. Okay. Men are baffled by you. Does it matter who tells the story as long as it is told with accuracy and integrity?
Yes. To a certain degree.
It does, because who tells the story will determine how accurate it is.
My issue is the monetization of it.
And who's making money off of it too. Right? So yes, it is known that we have not been the ones telling our own stories, right? That is why we're now hearing a lot about these historical figures. And a lot of the stories that's being told of us have been what's the word? Distorted, right?
Yeah.
The story of what it means to be an African, right? There's a reason why there's shame of calling yourself African, right? Because the movies that we looked at, right, the cartoons, the depictions, right, had being African as whatever the stereotypical image that you want to call, right? And so who's telling the story is very, very important. Right. You have anything else to say to that? We gotta wrap it up.
But remember in college, one of the primary people that we were reading was Basil Adams.
Who?
The Canadian historian.
I don't know.
That was the primary resource for a lot of particularly the antiquity historical analysis of African history. And I was always just baffled by whose voice was allowed to be projected.
Yeah.
That always alarmed me. And it wasn't until, let's say, we got into more of those younger professors.
Yeah.
The ones that were a little bit more attuned to newer research. So I think the voice and the background
it's important.
Is just as important as the integrity of the person. Because and it's a part of the community, but I do question his integrity sometimes.
No, you have me more concerned.
I don't think we should get concerned.
I am concerned. No, it's like
the monetization of it that concerns me. In the sense that I don't want it to be grabbed for him because he says this is an untapped.
I know. But you see, well, everybody else will benefit too.
Exactly.
Include
That's the great part about it.
everybody else
Everyone
will
benefits.
everybody else will benefit. So that gives me, some kind of comfort. Okay, so Rodriguez, I would say it is. Denzel pointed out a similar scenario using
Schindler's List.
Schindler's List, yes, which was told by a Jewish director as opposed to Godfather being done by an Italian director. Either director could have told the story, but culturally, it was important to be okay. He's responding to
Being
Phil's,
more
yeah, to be
yeah.
told by the people who experience the story. The connection is much different.
Do
It
we
is.
see that a lot? I feel like we do.
What?
When there's an Italian film, it's usually directed and fully staffed, and the casting is
By
fully
Yeah,
Italian.
by yeah.
And when it's a Jewish film, especially when talking about the Holocaust or
Yeah.
anything historically relevant, they tend to be a part of all decision making.
But you see, what's unique with us is that the Black diaspora
So
is
vast.
so vast and diverse, right?
Yes.
So, it would be easy to say, oh, all Black people, we all think the same, we all celebrate the same, we all practice our religion
And
the
it's not like
same.
he did it like Nina Simone's story, where he hired
Exactly.
an Afro Latina and put a prosthetic nose and made her darker, like for the cinematography. Like that was offensive. But we're not seeing that so far. In the early reports, what's being released
Yeah.
on Zinger.
Yeah.
That's not the case here.
Yeah.
Yet.
Yeah. So far.
So far.
So far.
I wonder if they're going to try to make these Portuguese men look super handsome and whatnot and appealing.
It's Hollywood.
They were little.
It's Hollywood. It's Hollywood. That's probably possible. But in the example of the Schindler's List and the Italians and the Jews, it's easier for them, to not have this debate. I think I'm looking at it from the outside, but it's easier for them to not have this debate because I'm guessing the Italian culture is not as diverse as the Black diaspora, right? And so it's the concept of us coming being having this collective mindset or collective approach to even telling our own stories is tricky.
It is.
It is tricky, because as much as I have studied African American studies, right, and I've taught the subject, right, and I live in this country, I am still being told. No, no, really, I am still being told. Oh, I've been told that it does not qualify me to really understand what it means to be Black in America. No, I've been told that. I've been told that. So it's tricky, it's tricky, and so I celebrate these movies because I think it really helps to bring us closer together, help to understand the stories, and remove the differences and those lines.
I'm really hoping that these stories are now being told create more opportunities for collaborative learning.
Yeah.
That we are opening up more beyond the dialogue.
Yeah.
I remember, and I actually remember the exact person who I had this conversation with literally like 12 years ago, and it was Alex Persky.
Yes, I remember Alex.
He said at some point we have to get tired of just showing up for movements and not actually seeing things through and moving ahead. To what degree do we stop just demanding our story be told and start just telling it?
I think that's happening now.
I feel like that's what you're doing in your other ventures.
Yes.
I feel like that's what you're doing with your platform here.
Yeah.
I feel like in discussing this and bringing the knowledge, because not everyone is going to know that these things are happening unless more people are talking about it.
Yeah.
And I think that this is a level of activism that is now shifting.
Yeah. I think so. And I must give credit. Guess how I found out about this and Zinger movie. I have a YouTube channel, everybody, right? The Sarbo Lifestyle, and the YouTube channel has my 4 videos so far. Proud of myself. But the last conversation we had, I don't know who the person is, or whoever you are, thank you. If you go on my YouTube page right now, you will see that somebody left a comment, one comment, and that comment is, "Oh, 50 Cent is creating an Nzinga movie.
And I would never even know.
I didn't even know.
And I feel like I'm tapped into all things.
I didn't know. I don't know who this person is. They go by the name Vision. So thank you very much. And I was like, really? Thank you. And then I started doing research and I'm like, he is doing this.
How do I not know this? One thing, I love all things 50 sometimes, like closeted. And I just feel like
and that's a huge question. How is it that and a lot of the publications on this was done by mostly they're done outside of the United States.
I saw one from Vibe and one from Essence.
Yes, Vibe and Essence were the only two publications that spoke about it. That is telling. That is telling.
It really is.
That is telling. Like why is it nobody knows if 50 Cent is in the middle of creating this?
Question his marketing team.
His marketing team. Well, maybe
who's on his marketing team? We all know that when the marketing team fails or not a part of the community, they tend to fail with outreach to the community.
Now you're getting me even more worried. We need to stop this conversation.
We need to find who's on that marketing team.
We need to stop.
We're gonna go a rabbit hole with this series before it even airs.
Blows my mind if nobody knew about this. Anyway, so last point before we leave, I think of Denzel when he did the Steve Biko story and Forrest Whitaker doing Idi Amin. Oh, yeah. Oh. But did Africans complain about Forrest Whitaker?
I didn't see that.
You have
maybe I'm not
Idi Amin?
No, I saw them.
Okay.
I did the comments.
Yeah, I don't know. Were Africans were Africans like upset?
They were more happy with the representation.
He's from Uganda, right? He's Uganda. Yes. Were Ugandan? I have asked my Ugandan friends. Were they upset that Forrest Whitaker played Idi Amin's role?
Huh. And maybe I just wasn't.
That's gonna be my homework.
Comments.
I have a WhatsApp group with mostly Ugandans. I'm gonna ask them. Hey guys, huh?
Now you're gonna ask.
I'm definitely asking. Were you guys offended by Forrest Whitaker playing Idi Amin?
That should be one of your chats.
Don't quote me. I know. Don't quote me on that as what, for example, of representation. Don't forget to share. Like, oh, and thank you. Yes. Both movies included natives of each ethnic backgrounds being discussed. Okay. All right. So I think yes, we're definitely coming to an end. This is an end. It was a great conversation. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you. I know I keep forgetting to look at the camera. It was indeed a pleasure. I did enjoy this conversation. And hopefully you'll be willing to join me at another time. I'm sure there's going to be another topic.
Just text me and then
okay.
I'll dive right in.
Yes, I think we have a good vibe here. I think we have a good vibe here. What do you guys think? So thank you for joining me. This was really great. Please, everybody, share, like, yes, all that fun stuff. I'm on YouTube also. So I'll be doing this every other week. On the off week, it's just me just talking about a particular topic. But every other week, I'll have a guest with me. And so I had Victoria Williams with me today. So my sincere apologies for having my name on the screen. It was a little technical snafu, but her name really is Victoria Williams. So I appreciate the conversation. It really was great. And we are going to be looking forward to the Zinger. Yes, African Warrior.
Maybe we'll have a watch party.
We should. We should. But I'm planning something for Woman King. I'll let you know about that. I'm planning something for Woman King. Yes. It'll be good. All right, everybody. Good night. Thank you very much. And we will be signing out now. And have a good evening. Bye.